Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Talks for Emerging Leaders. Leadership Talks is a podcast hosted by Leadership Card, a leadership coaching training organization. Leadership Card is the brainchild of four individuals: Kiran Sandhu, Ashish Datta, Ram Ramakrishnan, and Devesh Mohan, who share a common vision to support 1 million emerging leaders across the globe to solve problems for self, others, and the organization. Leadership Card runs leadership programs for individual contributors and corporate clients. Our coaches collectively have over 100 years of experience and come from diverse fields such as academics, finance, real estate, and sales. Every week on Leadership Talks, we invite leaders from varied fields and industries to share their stories and tips and tricks and strategies which you can apply to accelerate your personal and professional growth journey. I'm your friend, Kiran Sandhu, a leadership communication coach, and I'm hosting today's episode along with Ram Ramakrishnan. Today, we will be discussing on simplifying business finance. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you, Kiran. In today's episode, we are privileged to have the presence of Mr. Chinmay Ananda, financial educator, business finance storyteller, trainer, workshop facilitator. He is a civil engineer who turned into finance educator. A sought after expert, he has presented at the Australian Tax Office ATO, Certified Practicing Accounts CPA, Institute of Chartered Accountants India, and various industry associations, business schools, and councils. He has written a book, Fundamentals of Financial Statement, after analyzing 142 business heading towards bankruptcy and making very low profit. It's available in Amazon Kindle, and he is also releasing another book called The Bottom Line, which we talk about a little later. Video of his presentations are available in financeacademy.com.au and on my app, Finance Academy. Thank you, Chinmay, for accepting our invite and being here on the Leadership Talk.
Thank you, Ram sir. Thank you, Kirandeep, for having me. And Ram sir, I know I wrote that introduction, but you really made it sound very interesting and at the same time professional. So I'm excited, looking forward to having this conversation. So I believe, Ram sir, you can take over.
And I would like to just say absolutely a privilege to have you today, and looking forward to understanding when you say simplifying finance, especially for people like me who don't understand finance. Let's see how much you can simplify it for many people who are out there who don't understand finance. Over to you, Ram.
Now, the interesting fact is, first I wanted you to share what triggered you to go into teaching about finance after studying civil engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you had asked this question, or if someone had told me when I just graduated as a civil engineer, saying that, you know what, Chinmay, a day will come when you will be educating people on the subject finance, I would have laughed my heart out. Like, civil engineer, finance, like where is the common ground? Now, this is what people ask me. In fact, even this morning, I was having a conversation with a very senior chartered accountant in Bangalore. He has got 40 years of experience. Well, I haven't taken permission to mention his name. Even getting 5 minutes appointment is very challenging. But however, I know he was kind enough to give an appointment. I gave him my book. He looked at both my books and he said, "Oh, are you a chartered accountant?" I said, "No, sir, I'm an engineer." And he was like, "Engineer? And you have written a book on finance?" I said, "Sir, with all due respect, what happened was after I did engineering, I did MBA. And I thought having MBA next to my name, I could run a successful business. Well, that wasn't the case. Now, nothing against MBA, nothing against the university where I graduated. In fact, I teach the subject finance at that particular university today. It was all because of my ignorance. And I failed in 6 startup ventures. So I come from the school of hard knocks. And one thing I did wise after my 6th failed venture was I asked for help. And my first business mentor analyzed what all I had done and said, "Chinmay, do yourself a favor, educate yourself on the subject finance, because finance is the root of how business makes money and language of business is numbers. and you do not know how to speak that language. It made a lot of sense, but the big question was, how will I go about getting my head around and understanding the topics when it comes to finance and accounting? Because neither I had the time or the money to go to a university to learn about this subject. This is when I went around picking the brain of the best accountants, management accountants, chartered accountants, CPAs, CFOs, financial gurus for my own understanding. Little did I know, I was understanding the subject finance from an engineer's perspective. See, as engineers, our mindset is a problem solving mindset. We look for pattern, we look for problem, we come up with solution. Now, of course, I'm not generalizing here. However, a typical accountant's mindset is a compliance mindset. And where I saw the gap is when the key decision makers in business, when they want to make decision, yes, they want to ensure the business is compliant, but they wanted to know the decisions that they are making, which is always based on numbers, how will it impact the profit of the company, which is bottom line. Now, again, Kirandeep, as you said, that you're a non-finance person. This is a frequent kind of reaction and reply I keep getting from people. And I tell them that, you know what, no one should consider yourself as a non-finance person. And I will tell you why. And I would like to break that misconception and perception people have around the subject finance, because we are all finance people. Now, I love to educate people by comparing it with some kind of a game. Probably let's go with football, because that is something that people will be familiar with. Or any sport. Let's say if we have to play any sport, we need to know two things. One, we need to know the rules of the game, which is compliance. Two, we need to know how to make decisions while playing the game so that it will enhances our chances of winning the game. Same thing in business. If I have to start a business in one particular country or on a particular geographical area, whether it is Malaysia or Australia, India, I have to abide to the rules and regulations set by the taxation office, by the government, compliance. There might be tax, there might be VAT, there might be GST. I have to comply. That's compliance. Then I need to know the decisions that I'm making. How will it impact the bottom line? Now, Kiran, if I may, I'll ask you this question. When that sports person, whether it is football or tennis or cricket, whatever it is, when that person wants to makes that decision to either play defensively or aggressively, how will they go about making that decision?
You put me in the spot for this one. What do I say, Ram? Please help me. As I said, I was going to be the one who was going to be sitting and taking the
It
questions.
is the strength of the people, right? You look at the play, if you want to play that, the strength of each other as a team, if you're looking at it, that's what you do. Yeah.
So again, one will go about making the decision by looking at the scoreboard, which is numbers, depending on the situation, which is again numbers. A football player cannot kick the ball after 90 minutes and say, yeah, I scored a goal. Sorry, buddy, you were supposed to score it within 90 minutes, 90 numbers. So it is by looking at numbers, they make those decisions either to pass the ball next to the player or go after the goal. Same thing in business. When we have to make that decision, we have to look at those critical numbers. And this is one statement I keep repeating every single time. If we carefully observe, if we just zoom out and if we carefully observe, almost every decision that we are making in our life is directly or indirectly related to numbers. I repeat, almost every decision that we are making in our life is directly or indirectly related to numbers. Now we decided to have this particular session on this particular day, particular time, numbers. Now Ram sir is wearing specs, I'm wearing specs. We know the power of a glass, numbers. Now, if I have to fly to Malaysia or Australia, what time is the flight? What's the duration? What's the cost? Numbers. The food we eat. Someone has calculated the calories, vitamins, so on and so forth. So for my height, for my body weight, this is what I should be eating, numbers. So when it comes to business, unfortunately, people have the perception that they're non-finance people, and they tend to shy away from numbers. And they think it is a responsibility of some CFO or accountant or someone in the finance department to look into numbers. But I beg to differ, because we make decisions and our decision will directly or indirectly impact the bottom line. So to answer your question, Ramsa, because I saw this and I had failed because of this kind of misconception and perception, and I thought people knew what they were doing, successful businesses, even in Australia. And I got to know, you know what? Unfortunately, this is not the case. This is a phenomenon around the world. Now, let us say if I have to drive in Malaysia, if I have to drive in Australia, in spite of the fact I have been driving since the age of 10, those government will say, hey, first we will test before giving you a license, which means they're saying we want to ensure you know how to drive so that your life and other lives on the road are safe. But let's say I want to start a business. It happens like this. Within half a day, I get the business number registered, boom, you go. As if I know how to run a business. Who is known is testing it. And then this is something that I keep telling people. Let us say we buy a gadget, a mobile phone, or any gadget. It comes with a user's manual. How to use this phone, how not to use this phone. But when we take loan from a bank, when we borrow money from our parents to start a business, when we take money from the investors, no one will give a user's manual saying, this is how I want you to use this money in this particular business. Because for some reason, people think they understand numbers or they have this knowledge of numbers, which is not the case. And this is how I ended up training people on the subject finance, Ramsar.
By the way,
Great.
Chinmay,
Yeah,
you
very
have just
simple.
created a shift in my mindset about how I should be looking at numbers. Just before this conversation, I was telling Ram, you and the other three guys are into finance. You can look into the numbers, and now I shall be educating myself so that I can be contributing to that conversation on numbers. So I thank you so much for explaining that everything is all about numbers, and I can't be relying on others. I have to have my own knowledge so that I can be part of impacting the bottom line that is there in the organization, if it's my organization. Thank you, Chinmay. Yes, Ram, over to you.
Yeah, it is the next question we had is what are the some of the myths about business finance that you would like to break for our audience today? One of
Okay.
the things you already shared saying that everyone needs to look at finance as the important thing, non-finance. What
Yeah.
other thing?
Yes, I hope I've already broken the very first myth,
Absolutely.
which
I was
is
just going to say he's already addressed it, but nonetheless, I'm sure that was the first one you've broken for us. So we all need to be educating ourselves, and it is for everyone because everything, as what Chinmay has said, is about numbers. It's whether it's we're dealing with it directly or indirectly. So Chinmay, what would be the other myths you want to break for our viewers and me too today?
okay. So I'll repeat the first myth and slightly emphasize on that point, and then I will like to move on to the second one. The first myth is, as I mentioned, non-finance person is a myth. Non-finance business owner is a myth. Non-finance manager is a myth. Now, let me tell you why. Again, going back to the game of football. Now, what is the aim of the game in football? A team will aim to score more goals than the opponent. That's the aim of the game. In business, the aim of the game is to make sure a business will make more money than it spends. In football, whenever some action is happening on the field and goals are being scored, there is someone who's recording it. We call them scorer. In business, whenever a financial transaction happens, and this is where again people go, oh my God, there are hundreds and thousands of financial transactions. I don't get it. Another myth. And I tell people, or I put them at ease, saying that you just need to know four things, only four things, because these are the only four types of financial transactions that can happen in any business. Kirandeep, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Money comes in, money goes out, money supposed to come in, money
Yeah,
supposed to go out. Period. That's it.
that's it.
So permutations and combinations of these four is what we see on financial reports. And the person who records it, we call them bookkeeper. Now, unfortunately, in most businesses, especially startups and SMEs, these transactions are not recorded, or it is done by someone who may not have an experience. So imagine if the scorer is not scoring the goals properly, will we know who's winning or losing? So same thing in business. If we don't have these transactions recorded, how will we know whether a business is possibly making profit or not? Now back to football. There is someone called as a referee. Now, what is the role of a referee? To ensure every player abides by the rules of the game and there is a fair game played. This role in business to a great extent is played by accountant count. They count the financial transactions and they ensure business abides by the regulations set by the taxation office. Now, Kirandeep, have you ever seen a football player asking the referee, how should I go about kicking the ball? Never.
Oh, that much I knew. Yes.
Then why is that we have this misconception that when it comes to making decisions, financial decision, it is responsibility of an accountant or someone in the finance department. So the next myth I would like to break here is accounting is not finance and finance is not accounting. They're two different things. In fact, finance starts when accounting ends. Because in the game of football, as we just discussed, before the player decides either to pass the ball next to the player or go after the goal, they know the score, they know the situation, which means they know relevant specific number and they decide to play the game so that it will enhance their chances of winning. In business, when we are making that critical decision, do we know how it is going to impact the bottom line, which is profit? Now, let me give you a couple of examples, if I may, Ramsa. Let's say I'm a
Yes.
salesperson. And usually salespeople say, oh, I'm in charge of sales, finance, it's responsibility of CFO, whoever. And let us say I am selling these air mouse device. Because you're all leadership coaches, you have your own firm around this. And let's say you are my target market. I approach, I make the sales pitch and I say, Kirandeep, this is what this device is all about. And let's say she is sold and she's like, I would like to buy 10 of them. How much is it? And let's say I say it is $100 per piece. Now, Kirandeep might be thinking, I need 10 of them, which will be $1,000, but my budget is only $800. Which means now, as a salesperson, I have to decide if I am going to sell this device $80 per piece. So the decision that I'm going to make, either yes or no, is not just a salesperson's decision. It is a finance decision because it is going to impact the bottom line. Let us say I'm a HR manager, and now and then the employees will be knocking the door asking for more pay or raise or commission. The decision I'm going to make is not just a HR manager's decision. It is going to impact the bottom line because money is involved, finance is involved. Let us say I'm a warehouse manager, and every 3 months I will get a call from the higher management asking how much stock do we have, how much raw materials, how much inventory do we have, because they would like to order more. If I give more order, in spite of the fact we have got raw materials, cash will be sitting in form of stock. So it is not just a warehouse manager's decision, it is a financial decision. Let us say I'm a retail manager and this shirt hasn't been sold for a while, and next stock, new stock is arriving next week. Immediately I will have to decide to put a tag on this, 10% discount, 20% discount, 50% discount. It is not just a retail manager's decision, it is a finance decision. So again, I would like to break that myth. Non-finance person is a myth. We are all finance people. We are all making decision, and our decision will directly or indirectly impact the bottom line.
Okay. So those were two myths that you have broken for us today. Well, obviously, and the second thing my learning is going to be that where finance starts the minute accounting ends. So it's that way. Yeah, and the other part. Okay, so now let me take you to this other section, where your growth journey started, actually, which was about with your 6 failed businesses. And a person who's failed once would probably say, I'm not doing it again, but you've failed 6 times. So that itself is somebody who is a very resilient person and a leader, I would say. So in your, what would be some of the leadership lessons that you have learned from your failed businesses?
Okay. Thanks to my mentor, thanks to my guru back in those days, who used to back me up. Whenever I failed or whenever things didn't go according to plan, I used to go and bounce ideas with him, even though business is not his expertise. But he used to always say, son, always remember 3 words. Never give up. If 3 words is not good enough, take 7 words. Never give up. Never, ever give up. Okay. So that made me move from one failed venture to another. With regards to the leadership lessons that I learned during the process, and then pretty much coming out of those failed ventures, now looking back, key takeaways. One, again, this was something I learned from one of my mentor. Never use the 3 most dangerous words in English. The 3 most dangerous words in English are, I know that.
I know that.
The moment you say, I know that, you're not ready to listen and observe and learn from what your market has to say. I do not know opens a whole new world of opportunity. And it is okay to tell people I do not know. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay not to know everything. So be vulnerable, be comfortable saying that these are my strengths, these are my weakness. Let me embrace my strengths and weakness, and don't pretend to become someone else. So these were some of the leadership lessons that I learned along the way. And one last important thing is, today, looking back, because I'm about to publish in fact, it's already published, the book, The Bottom Line, and it's available on the leading platforms. When people ask, Chinmay, how did you go about writing this? Again, the same question, engineer, writing on finance and things like that, in spite of all the failed ventures. Now, looking back, I think it was Muhammad Ali who said, surround yourself with people who see more in you than you see in yourself. So yeah, these are some of the leadership lessons that have worked along the way.
Very valuable leadership lessons that you've shared, and I do like those 3 words that you should never ever say in English, that I know that. Because very true, the minute you say you know it all, then there is nothing else to it. You've already got your whether it's your cup full, and which means that there is no more place for you to learn, and as a result there is no growth for you, and which means you're just full of it. So yeah, that, and the fact, never give up and keep bouncing back is, I think, and that actually brings us to that whole conversation with Chinmay. You're saying is that your coaches don't have to be from the area of your expertise or the failings that you are in, but people who can guide you, support you in your growth journey. And that's what we do at Leadership Card too, that we are a leadership organization and we work with people in their growth journey, because everybody's challenges are different, and you sometimes you need to be surrounding yourself with the right people who can be like those, either your light or your mirrors, who can help you to light up your light inside, or actually show you the mirror so that you can illuminate too. So there's a very valuable lessons that you've added on. Ram, would you want to take the next question?
Yes, as we have been asking, he has been giving a lot of lessons. Now I can't be asking him what lessons he's going to give from his book, kind of a thing. And I'm sure it will be filled with lots of lessons. Is anything else you would like to talk about your books in general, both the books?
Because now we have you have the I just want to
Fundamentals.
tell our viewers that it's Chinmay's book is the fundamentals of financial statements and the bottom line. And we are super happy that Chinmay is with us today as his book gets released today on the platforms. Yes. And so Chinmay, do share some wisdom out of this with our listeners and viewers.
The first thing, which I've already mentioned, but again, I would like to repeat it, is almost every decision we make in our life or in business is directly or indirectly related to numbers. And as I mentioned before, there are only 4 things that can happen in any business. Money comes in, money goes out, money is supposed to come in, money is supposed to go out. Finance is a common sense subject. Unfortunately, common sense is not very common. And this is what I keep reminding people. And when key decision makers, let's say the people who will be watching this, I'm sure they will eventually they will have to make that critical decision. And they will be asking specific relevant numbers. Unfortunately, what happens at that time is someone from the finance department or accounting department will send them a big fancy Excel file or a colorful financial report. Now that is data. Data is crude oil. And we know crude oil is something that we cannot use it because it has to be filtered, it has to be processed. So data filtered becomes information. And this information is what we see on financial reports, financial statements, balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow. And again, for someone who may not have the expertise to read and understand, that information has to be processed and analyzed so that it becomes relevant information. Now, this relevant information usually is it will have those financial jargon and terminology, which again, someone with finance or accounting background may find it difficult. So this is where I have seen the gap. When financial experts are trying to communicate with their clients who may not have finance acumen, they will be speaking at level 5. And unfortunately, these people are at level 1. They're like, what's debit, what's credit, what's profit, what's cash, what's this margin, what's EBITDA, so on and so forth. So after getting that relevant information, the key thing, the critical thing is communicating in simple layman language. And I'm sure we would have all heard, when things doesn't go according to plan, people say, oh, it was because of miscommunication. Now, this person was saying this, that person was saying this. What they're trying to say is, we missed the communication. The reason we missed the communication is simply because we did not communicate using the language of business, that is numbers. So if we can communicate in simple layman language, we can bring everyone onto the same page, and then I believe decisions needs to be made. As they say, none of us are as smart as all of us. So these are the key lessons that I have emphasized in my book, both the books, Fundamentals of Financial Statements and The Bottom Line.
Wonderful. Ram?
Great. Chinmay, it was a very educative session for all our viewers. I'm sure many of them are getting benefited about that. See, always it is, we are living in a very simplified world, kind of a thing. I want to look at everything on the platter, and that's where my last question leads into, in case you have to give one message for the emerging leaders. I'm talking about emerging leaders or in the age of 30 to 45 years, they're trying to build up their career or move up, kind of a thing. What is that kind of one message you give them, being financially literate? About part of it.
Well, whether the emerging leaders are in their 20s or 30s or 40s or even in the 60s, I would like to remind them that one question they were asked by their parents when they were children. So if a child runs to their parents and let's say a boy or a girl is asking her parents or his parents, Papa, Mama, can you give me 50 rupees or 100 rupees or $10 or $20? What is that one question every parent is going to ask? Why? What will I do with the money? Please ask this question every single time before you want to spend. Ask yourself, when you borrow loan from the bank, what will I do with this money? When you are investing your own money in your business, what will I do with this money? When you're asking your partners, co-founders to invest, what will we do with this money? When you're raising funds from investors, what will we do with this money? Because there are only two things that will happen when money goes out. One, it will become an expense. Two, it will create an asset. And as I said, finance is a common sense subject. Common sense is not very common. But if we can remind and ask ourselves, consciously ask ourselves, okay, am I going to spend this money where will it become an expense or will it become an asset? If it is an expense, what kind of return is it going to give on the expense? Of course, it's not that we can't run a business without expenses. There will be rent, there will be utility bills, we have to pay salaries, so on and so forth. But are we measuring it? And the second thing, okay, if it is an asset, is it a performing asset or is it a non-performing asset? Or a non-essential asset altogether? So this is one question that I would request people to remind themselves and remember for the rest of your life. What will I do with the money? If you look at the so-called bad boy billionaires on Netflix, again, billionaires who unfortunately are sitting in London and things like that, if at all someone asked them, now of course I'm no one to comment against Mr. Vijay Mallya, but when he borrowed that 4,000 or 6,000 crores of money from the bank, if someone had asked him, what will you do with that money? Oh, I'll buy these flights. But Mr. Mallya, I thought Kingfisher Airlines is a low-cost airlines. Then why are you buying such expensive airlines? If someone asked Mr. Harshad Mehta and the 1991 scam, okay, I'm taking money from this bank and I'm supposed to do as a licensed agent, I'm supposed to give that money to another bank. But if that bank asked, Mr. Mehta, what did you do with that money? Oh, you know what, I've got 2 weeks time. I'll quickly trade it in the share market. I will double it. I'll take the profit. Do you think they would have given the money? So again, please ask this one question. What will you do with that money?
Thank you so much, Chinmay, for sharing with our viewers about finance and simplifying it with very simple examples, whether it was with football, crude oil, or asking that basic question, what are you going to do with this finance? I'm sure there are many takeaways. For me, is going to be the mindset shift that I want to create in myself, that finance is always a part of our life. There are no people who are non-finance. So that's my key takeaway. So thank you for joining us today, Chinmay, on this show. And I want to thank our listeners and our reviewers today for joining us today. Thank you. Leadership Talks will be back next week with another leader to share their journey. For more information, join the Leadership Card Facebook page and tune into Leadership Talks for Emerging Leaders on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And do look out for more programs on leadership, communication, and personality development on our website, www.leadershipcard.com. That's all from today. This is Kiran, Chinmay, and Ram signing off.